Well, g'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life, and beside me here are two legendary 80s/90s GT cars with some notable differences. This one here has a 2-litre inline-6 twin turbo and this one has a 3-litre inline-6 single turbo, and today I'm going to be showing you some of the exterior and interior differences, and then of course the differences between the engines, and then we'll be taking them for a drive. Here at the front, the exterior differences are subtle but somewhat noticeable. Both have the classic 80s sort of wraparound look at the front with the very distinctive pop-up headlights. Down the side they have a very striking silhouette, and I have to say, when you get up close and personal with these Supras, you start to realise that they are some very big two-door coupes, especially for the time period. But the tasteful design moves into a very nice looking spoiler on both of these cars, and round back they look really cool as well. They had that very sort of square chopped off back end with the very 80s looking strakes in the lights and that kind of thing, and some very cool looking twin turbo Toyota Supra badging at the back as well. These cars basically embody everything about a typical 80s GT car, besides maybe some window louvers on the back window.
The engines are obviously different as well, with the white one having a 1G GTE, a 2-litre twin-turbo inline-6 with 154 kilowatt and 244 Nm of torque. The black one has a 7M GTE, a 3-litre turbocharged inline-6 with 173 kilowatt and 344 Nm of torque. Both engines could be paired with either a 4-speed automatic or a 5-speed manual, with power naturally going to the rear wheels.
The interiors have some notable differences as well. However, the important thing to note here is that there is another difference between these cars besides the engine, and that is that this one is a limited model, which is very cool because it contains some pretty outstanding technology for 1988. It has all sorts of things like really nice and frankly quite aggressively bolstered leather seats that are also electric down here as well. And I reckon unquestionably the coolest part about the interior of this car is the digital dash. It's got a digital tachometer, almost like the S2000, which didn't come out until over 10 years later, and a digital speedometer, and then digital boost gauges and oil pressure and all sorts of things over here. It's all very cool, and of course naturally very driver focused as well. Some other cool things that you have in this car is the Thames suspension. So basically this was probably one of the first cars ever to come with some kind of adjustable suspension system where you were able to firm up the suspension at the touch of a button, and it would even have some kind of little gauge here in the interior that would tell you how firm your suspension is in your sporty coupe. The last cool feature that this limited model came with was what they call auto drive, which really is just the precursor to cruise control, but the owner of this car likes to joke that this is the first car to come with Tesla autopilot. So they are the notable interior differences between the normal and the limited model. However, really, apart from the colour, the rest of the interiors are basically the same. You'll obviously notice that they have all the same layout and everything like that, just because that one's not a limited. It doesn't have all the fancy cruise control and suspension and all that stuff, and unfortunately it doesn't have the digital dash. But alas, the gauges in that car are still very cool, very 80s, and overall both of these cars have very nice interiors, even though they are nearly 35 years old now. Okay, driving the Toyota Supra. I'm in the 2-litre twin turbo one first of all, just to see how this one goes. And the first thing that is absolutely staggering to me, this is the longest bonnet I have ever seen in my entire life. But you know what's really cool? Pop-up headlights. Why can't people bring back pop-up headlights, man? They're so cool. Alrighty, so we're just starting to come up to the fun bit, where we actually be able to open the taps a little bit and see what this thing's like. Alright, here we go. Let's give it some power. There's the turbos. Yeah, there we go. The power is there. You just have to kind of wait for it a little bit. Oh yeah, that's some nice handling, eh? That's very nice. All right, here we go, on power. It's nice, but I certainly wouldn't call it fast. Green light comes on to say the turbo's kicking in, but I'm not really noticing too much difference, frankly. The handling is nice though. And that engine sounds good. Sounds very good. 6 cylinders of fury up the front there. If I'm being honest, I think jumping in something like this does very much warp your perception. You're used to seeing all the videos of the Mark IV Supras with 1,000 horsepower, and you watch that speedo just absolutely wind around like you've never seen. This, by comparison, is not quite the same, but fundamentally it still handles surprisingly well. It's very, very nice through the turns. Well, I think that's given you a reasonable idea of what the 2-litre twin turbo model is like. Now it's time to jump in the beast, the 3-litre turbo model. Oi, mate! Alright, this thing has definitely got some power, mate. I just gave it a little tap of throttle and boom! Absolutely took off. This car is in, frankly, far better condition than that 2-litre model. The steering wheel feels so nice. Steering is very nice and direct. Still got the awesome looking pop-up headlights. And this gauge cluster, it's too bad the tachometer is the only bit on the gauge cluster that's not working, but everything else is. It's just so 80s, man. It reminds me of my old like Casio keyboard that I used to have. Oh yes, that's some power. Let's give it a little bit of beans along here, and we're off. Oh yes, that is what I expected out of that car, and was a little bit disappointed when I didn't get it, but man alive, this has more than enough power, that's for sure. I just wish it had some kind of Tiptronic mode so I wouldn't keep like flicking between second and third gear at sort of around 78 odd k's an hour, you know. Just put it in second here. Ooh, yes! I don't mind, obviously it would be nice if it had a Tiptronic mode, but I don't mind the fact that either of these cars are automatic because it suits the character of the car very nicely. It's a car that you can happily drive to and from work or drive, you know, long distance somewhere and be very, very comfortable, have plenty of overtaking power, and look absolutely awesome while you're doing it. But at any moment you can just that is quite a lot of power. Let's slow it down. Well, there we go. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Kiwi Car Life. I hope you enjoyed it.
And if you like classic JDM cars, then check out the 2 links that are popping up right about now. One of them is my review of a 1991 NSX, and the other is a review of a 1999 Honda S2000. And I will look forward to seeing you again next time.